Ladies and gentlemen, I want to use this opportunity once again to say blessed love to all Jamaicans wherever you are. I hope you'll have a peaceful, prosperous, and a wonderful Tuesday, the 3rd of June. I know election mode in Jamaica is getting hotter and hotter as the days and weeks goes by. At some point, Mr. Holness has to announce the election day. It has to be announced at some point. It cannot continue forever. What is most strikingly, though, is that when I observe what is happening on both sides of the political fence in terms of JLP and the PNP and their campaign and the speeches they deliver, over the past couple of weeks, I've sort of make it a focus of mine to listen to a lot of those YouTube presentation, both in favor of the JLP and in favor of the PNP. Make sure that every morning, as usual, I get to the Daily Gleaner publication to see what is happening. I've not gone to Jamaica Observer yet, which I'm planning to do shortly. And just to listen, get synopsis of what the Prime Minister Andrew Holness and the leader of the opposition is actually articulating their chances at winning the election. And from there I make my own common sense analysis just to pass on my common sense decision or understanding to the common people of Jamaica. What is very evident in all of this political campaign thing going on right now between Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party is the fact that both these parties are selling corruption as if it is a limited edition of the politics that we have in Jamaica. Let me say that again. I notice both these parties are selling corruption as if it's a limited edition of the kind of politics we have in Jamaica. Because there's never a campaign speech, there's never a comment coming out of the Jamaica Labour Party and its supporters, there's never a comment coming out of the PNP and its supporters, even the leaders of both political parties, without mentioning the word corruption. And each time corruption is mentioned, I go back to the Dan Anderson poll that I do believe, was commissioned by the Gleaner, and I don't know if it was the Gleaner and the Star or Gleaner and it was commissioned by the Gleaner and some other entity. And the question for Jamaican was, what is the most important thing to you right now? What is the most troubling thing to you right now? The question takes that format. Crime and violence was the number one. Cost of living was about number 3, and I think number 2 was jobs and opportunity. Now, number 4 on the list was corruption. 8% of the respondents polled agreed that corruption was the 4th most important thing to them in Jamaica. Corruption to the people. And this clearly tells me, if that sample size that was polled by Dan Anderson represent a good sample size of the people's opinion, then I can only conclude that Jamaica has normalized corruption. Corruption is normalized in our politics, and it will be forever there, because to the people, it's not important. Well, yes, it's important to some extent, but it's the 4th most important issue to them. Not as important as cost of living, not as important as jobs, not as important as crime. Corruption. Now, from my common sense knowledge, I know, and from all researches done and studies carried out by myself, I know that corruption leads to crimes. Corruption leads create havoc in the job market. Corruption leads to high cost of living. All of these things. But yet, those things are far more important to people than corruption itself. Because the standard of living of people was okay in Jamaica, where they have their cost of living at a rate that is create a living wages for them and a good quality of life for Jamaican people. I'm sure corruption wouldn't be what it is in Jamaica. And this is why I say it is frightening to see both political parties selling corruption to their supporters as their opponent supporters or to Jamaica on a whole, as if it's a limited edition of the type of politics we have in Jamaica. I've always said it, and I've always said it, and I'll never stop saying it. Even iron, steel, if left alone for too long, corrodes. And once something is corrupted, if it's not treated, corruption or corrosion will only get worse. Now the JLP and Warren is trying to make sense of the corruption in the country by preaching and explaining how corrupt the PNP party is and how much of a liar the PNP party is, and how much they are everything that is bad and nothing good for the country and not good for the country. On the other hand, the PNP does the same thing said the same thing and does the same thing to the JLP. You are corrupt. You're a liar. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to highlight this about all the corruption speeches they're making from both sides of the fence. Because I want to make this clear, I'm not here for JLP, I'm not here for PNP, I'm here for the common people in Jamaica. We now need to wake up because this shit is happening to us, not to them. We are the ones who suffer. We are the ones who carry the burden of the country on our backs daily, not the PNP, not the JLP. So I think it is time for us as Jamaican people to wake up and realize, recognize. The corruption has become a cornerstone, one of the cornerstones of our politics. And a lot of people both JLP and PNP and both, like I said, are calling each other corruption supporters, bloggers, even party members. Accusing the opposite party or the other party of corruption and all. But none of them present any specific, clear and undoubtable information or evidence to support their corruption accusation. None of them does that. From time to time, they'll produce a little evidence that the party is lying about something. JLP lies about this, PNP lies about that. But corruption, they cannot produce and have never produced any clear evidence to support their accusation against the other party. JLP has not produced anything. The PNP has not produced anything, any evidence of such. And there's a reason why, ladies and gentlemen. There's an absolute reason why this is so. And I want you to think about this. What is the meaning of corruption? What is corruption? What is corruption? Politically, we're talking about politics now. In the political arena, what is corruption? How can we define corruption from a political perspective? How do we do that from a political perspective? It is very difficult to do so. It's not easy to define corruption from the political perspective. It is not easy to do it. Because corruption is not just Andrew Holness ripping off how many millions of dollars. Corruption is not just the amount of $1 billion that unaccounted for as reported by the founder and CEO of JAMP. You understand? That all doesn't amount to corruption. Because when people talk about politicians are corrupt and parties are corrupted, listen how they the reference they make about corruption in the political arena. For them, its move is stealing money. For them, it's stealing money. Everything, corruption is related to money activity. Some financial activity. What did you do with this money? Where did this money go? That's their definition. That's their focus of corruption. Well, just to add a little clarity to the whole narrative. Corruption is also moving money that was allocated to one project to another project. That's corruption. Simply put, it is corruption also. So it's not easy to define corruption in politics, but notice how both parties are selling it to the nation as if it's a limited edition of our politics. Which in truth and in fact, I'm convinced in some extent that it is. It is. If not, they wouldn't be trying to sell it to the country to outdo each other. That's the basis on which they're trying to outdo each other in this campaign cycle. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how much longer we're going to sit back and overlook what is happening around us. I've been crying out for Jamaicans, and I want to and you know, like I said, just to reach out to people with common sense understanding. Common sense understanding. We don't need to deep dive into politics to understand what is happening. If you listen carefully to what Mark Golding says and what Andrew Holness says, and members of the People's National Party saying, and members of the JLP political party are saying, if you listen to all of these, and even the bloggers who support JLP and bloggers who support PMP, just listen to them all, and you'll understand that you don't need to deep dive into politics to get a clear understanding of the bullshit that is happening around us. And they're offering us as politics, as governance. And I can't, for the love of me, understand why one person would think that only JLP can manage the country, or only PMP can manage the country. Why? So let the PMP run the country forever and see what happens, because we know. And I must say I heard it first with Monty Perkins, but I come to understand where it came from. Because the psychologist first mentioned that power corrupts. Absolutely. That power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you have one party in power for the next 30 years, what do you think gonna happen? The Prime Minister's wife made a statement 2 years ago, was published in the Daily Gleaner. Jamaica should vote for this Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, for the next 20 years and keep him in power. because it's good for Jamaica. She's handing him the autonomy of corruption, the power to corrupt and to become absolutely corrupt. I know what I'm actually trying to bring out here is falling on deaf ears many other times, but to most people it's falling on deaf ears. But like I said, if I reach 5% or 10%, that's good enough for me for the time being. Because I know we run from righteousness, we run from the right thing until we run right back to it. Because when we realize that our back's against the wall, then we have nowhere else to go. And maybe that's when we're going to wake up. You understand? As it is said, black people will never know ourselves until our back is against the wall. Right? The whole narrative that the sensational politics is interesting. Because what people want to hear, you want to put an headline out there that is sensational. Andrew Holness just ripped Mark Gold into pieces. Put that out there and see how many views you get, because people want to hear what it's saying. No, I'm not that kind of person. I'm not going to put a misleading headline out there to convince anyone to get to my platform and look at it, because that's lying. That's corruption in of itself also. I'm not going to put anything about PMP, ZIS to JLP and all of these things just to get people to switch to look at it. No, that's also misleading, that's deceitful, and that's corruption. That's a corrupt way to get to your audience. If it takes me the next 4 or 5 years to build this thing and get to people, that's fine. That's fine with me. Because I've always said, I know I'm going to have to work for mine. Nothing has ever come easy for me in life. Nothing. All who know me very well know that I work 16, 18 hours per day, 7 days a week. Right through. People beg me to stop work. I work very hard. So I don't rely on passive sources. I don't. And the truth is not something that sits well in the world in which we live now. It doesn't sit well amongst most of us you people in this world, the truth. We need a flashy headlines. That's what we need. Look at what is happening on TikTok. Look at what is happening on Instagram, the kind of headlines, the kind of thing that has been posted, the stuff that is posted, even on Facebook now. At one point you couldn't put yourself half naked on Facebook, but you can come there naked now. It's nothing. Freedom of expression. Freedom of information. It is okay to be flashy even when you're misleading people and being deceitful to people, even when you're misinforming people. It's okay to be flashy, to sensationalize whatever you have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm mentioning all of that because I want to say this is what is happening in the political arena in Jamaica right now. Because both parties realize that, oh, corruption. Even though the Dan Anderson poll is rated 4th on the list of most important things to Jamaican, but the political parties realize themselves, they can't sell cost of living, they can't sell crime, they can't sell job opportunities. None of them can sell that to the nation because none of them have performed better than the other in that era. But here's where they can challenge each other. Corruption, because there's no proof to that. It's difficult for them to prove corruption. I just want to use this opportunity once again in my own little common sense way to welcome all Jamaicans to the Lenny Robbins YouTube channel. Know your politics, let's come together to create a better understanding for all of us by watching and listening to what our politicians say, so that we of ourselves can watch what they do we of ourselves can watch what they do, and by extension, what they don't do. Because not only what they do is important, but it's even of greater importance is what they don't do. So we need now to start to watch our politicians. Ladies and gentlemen, my time has come. But today I just want to say welcome again to all Jamaicans, wherever you are. Be blessed. Keep the faith, hold strong. But make sure, I'll always encourage people to go out and vote, because that's the only choice we have in our political process in Jamaica, to vote in one party, vote out the other. So therefore, having that as our only opportunity to take part in the political process of our country, we must do so on an informed basis. We must have information, some information that influences us. Why should we vote? I don't want a blanket membership to JLP or a blanket membership to PNP. So when I go to the vote, I close my ears to what the JLP is saying or what the PNP is saying. Because I think it is time now for us to also recognize and realize it cost us a whole lot of millions and billions of dollars over the years since we have become an independent government. It has cost us billions and billions and billions of dollars, too numerous to count. You understand? That when one party is in power, they start something good. When the next party comes into power, they throw that aside and do their own thing. Now that shit doesn't cost the party who started this one good thing. It doesn't cost the party now who comes into power. It costs us, the citizens of the country. We bear the brunt of that cost. The starting over cost. We bear all of that. While this project, which would be good, is left to rot. And it is time we start to stand up for these things. Because we got to have what is called an overlapping of governance. We must have an overlapping of influences. Where we see one party as something that is of good influence, it must overlap with what the next incoming party is doing. You understand? People just can't abandon ideas and just run with it, do their own thing at the cost to the nation. Because it doesn't cost them. You can say all what you want to say and think all what you want to say. Nothing that the JLP does costs the JLP party. It costs the nation. Nothing that the PNP does costs the PNP. It costs the nation. It is us who pays these bills. It is us who has to fund, bear the brunt, the suffering and the struggle and the hardship so that they can pay the bills. The country's debt can be paid. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lenny Robbins YouTube show. Like I said, let's come together, create a better understanding for each other. Blessed love, Jamaica. Blessed love once again. This show will be coming bigger and better very soon. Watch out. Lenny Robbins, over and out.